am more than excited to share Vision of the Father Part 2, featuring Bishop Robinson and his family.
You know what I'm saying? I be mad. You know what?
The story is by no means a rags to riches story. However, we needed to rewind far enough into the family history of the Robinson family to find the root of their philosophies that led to generational success. We all want to know the secrets of success. This family is creating mastery, world-class musicians, authors, and entrepreneurs, and perhaps more importantly, kind, productive citizens.
He said, but it's more important to be nice.
And just even treating everyone nice.
It's all a fit to be nice. Just to be nice. Maybe this guy,
I've always seen my dad be nice to people. He's not a nut or someone to be taken advantage of.
This story is about beating the odds and above the odds generational success. I'm Keira, and I'm your host of Looking In.
Look at where we're going, look at where we've been. A view of all that's happening with some of our good friends. A chance for conversation, a reason for a smile. A step in a new direction, looking with us a while.
While this story is quite magnificent, it's not at all rare that our families flourish in hardest of circumstances. And evident here, Bishop Robinson was not born with a silver spoon. In fact, the odds were stacked highly against him. He and his two brothers grew up in an urban center that by all evidence was being systemically destroyed. 200,000 jobs were lost within 1 decade of his youth. The city was hit hard by the drug epidemic. Corruption was widespread and neighborhoods redlined.
Allow these two brothers that have been slain to die in vain.
Bishop Robinson is obviously a man of faith, a family man, a business and community leader, a mentor. He's an entertainment industry veteran.
Of course, you know, I'm into the arts. I did a few of these. I broke it. I'm South Philly. In case I have to live I did some things. Some pieces missing to the story. There are some pieces. I tell stories for a living, you know. There's some section. There were some pieces in the story. I'm ready to
He's even appeared in movies. But there's one standout characteristic that runs through the fiber of his entire family, and that's kindness, hinged on love.
See, here's the thing about love. Love is needed the most when it's deserved the least. And so, if we're good people and we have a good mind, we understand that everyone needs love. Listen, I'm saying that for real, not to bash and beat on, but you know, people have different issues and problems that they deal with in life. And we have to understand, we don't know where they came from, what happened to them when they were younger, who got to them, how they got to them. And so we got to look at people beyond their issues. And that's what I do.
That love, from not just from the church perspective, because you're preaching every day. You never closed your doors, so you were never a non-essential church. You were always essential. You make sure that you have a house. What's the name of your house? Where you?
Jayce House of Healing.
Okay.
And it's a block-long facility in the city of Philadelphia, in South Philly, where we house men and women in recovery.
Okay. And you say house, so tell me some of the services that you do.
Well, we of course we feed them. We get them counseling every day.
Wow.
We give them medication. So we help them to survive, and they live in-house. When I say we house them, they literally have a room and they have a shower, and we really have put them in a position to win.
Wow, that's great.
And
so you have job services when the
we have job services. We have counselors that come in. We have transportation for them. And that's our house of healing. But then,
don't get me wrong, no place is perfect, but this is one of the best recovery houses I've ever been in.
Then, of course, we do other things. We give away food, and we do food giveaways all the time. We, of course, during this COVID, we've done testing, and now we're a clinic at one of our other facilities where we vaccinate people.
Everybody in the city.
In the city, they can come and they can become vaccinated. We're vaccinating with Pfizer. Of course, our church is open every single day. It has always been open. We've never closed. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They can come and get help. We have prayer every morning from 6 to 7. But it's really about having for people to be helped. One of the things during COVID that was important for me, there were so many people that were going through it mentally, and everybody was closed.
I watched my son, and he put a group of young men together, and they were on Zoom calls, and all of them were saying they didn't know who to go to. Because we were sitting there in the middle of a pandemic, nobody in the world knew what to do. We were shut down, and then all of a sudden we're watching on television this man, George Floyd, get killed on television. And nobody, the churches were closed. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody was talking. None of the leaders were talking that they could identify with, that they were putting in our faces on television. That's where we knew we needed the churches, and they were closed. You never closed. One of the things that I know with church is, in the Gospels, is about not giving the spirit of fear. Well, and that was a thing that happened when the churches closed down and said, "Oh yeah, we're scared too."
Well, and they were scared, and unfortunately, and I don't penalize the pastors or the people that were in fear, and the reason I don't penalize them because people are where they are.
Right.
I just know that we couldn't afford to close. I've been around the world. I've been back in the bush in Nigeria. I've been in some places where diseases are prevalent, and God has kept me. I've been to India, and I've prayed for people in leprosy colonies. They're in places where, the leprosy has really eaten their eyes and their limbs, and I've laid hands on them, and I've watched God heal them. Right. So when Corona manifested in the U.S., I've been in so many places. It'd be like asking Daniel to be scared of cats. Okay. And he just he was in the lion's den already. It's like asking the 3 Hebrew boys that were in the burning fiery furnace, we're going to get ready to put you in a sauna. Well, the reality is there's just no comparison. God is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we could ask or think. And I just trust him to that magnitude. I don't know what other people's experiences are. So I'm not penalizing my brothers and sisters that closed. Some of them, I believe, did it because they felt led to do it.
But you've taken your walk, and you've taken your faith, and you've tested it. And you've proven God time after time after time. And so going back to your family again, because in your parenting, to what?
The most important thing that my dad told us is that everything comes from God, period. And his number one dedication in life is the church and God, period. That comes before everything. Going to be at church, Bible study, I don't care if we at in New York at a millionaires, he's got to be at Bible study, he's going to be at church. He's not going to miss anything when it comes to God. And I think that that's so important because when you do get that platform now, because at the end of the day, we all have a job. We have to share with people what we believe in. And so one thing that I do with every artist that I work with, Common, Pharrell, or every artist, K. Michelle, I'm like the chaplain. So I always pray before we go on. And that's my job. You know what I'm saying? Because I have that influence, I use it like, yo, we're going to have to pray before every show.
That we have to consider life as a process. And one of the things that I didn't understand early on is that life was a process and you have to live it as you go. And living it as you go means that you have to go through the steps necessary to become who you are. We are the sum total of everything that we go through.
Right.
What life makes of us, and when we encounter the challenges and the tests, is how we negotiate our way through those tests. You know, Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, has been a real testing ground, not just for me, but for many people, primarily because it doesn't really show the love from which its name is derived. I think that my process has been a very tedious process because of the way I was brought up. I was brought up in the project, in the projects, in the hood, and coming up in the hood. Now, a lot of people don't realize that that's a learning ground as well.
Right.
And you learn bad things, but you also learn survival techniques in the projects that you may not would have been able to learn anywhere else.
I ask this because some people it destroys, and others it's the opposite. So why do you think, because you've been able to watch a lot of people, counsel a lot of people, why do you think you were able to flourish in everything that you had to do from a young age?
Well, I think that one of the great things that happened in my life was that I had some uncles who interrupted what I thought was my life at that time. My uncles were godly men, God-fearing men. And my one uncle in particular, Bishop Robert T. Robinson, he took myself and my brothers under his wings after my father was killed. That was the beginning of a change in our path. And you need that. You need an inflection point.
So with him though, because you didn't have to listen,
Right.
What was it about him that made you listen?
And that's a very, very key question. I think that every person needs someone to speak into their lives. He showed us something. You know what he showed us? He showed us something that's very important, but it's absent. It's not present today. He showed us real love.
Oh, okay. And how did he do that?
Well, he came, and not only did he say, take us to church, but he did things. He bought us things, and not just, it's not just about the materialism, but the fact that he took time. He allowed us to spend the night over his house. He took us out of the project, out of the hood for a moment, and took us to his home and let us stay. He provided Christmases for us, and then it created a different kind of understanding in our minds about how people operate. Because we were only used to people from the hood operating.
Okay. So how was that? So how did it differ? And I know you talked about being kind and nice, so I know he obviously showed that. But how did it differ? Was it taking you to a restaurant or listening to what you said? Just little things that made the difference.
Well, he taught us things. He taught us biblical things, but then he just taught us things that a man should teach a boy. How to behave in front of ladies, how to open a door, how to set a table, how to eat, how to cut our pancakes.
Okay.
And my mother was a very nice woman, but she was a street woman in terms of she was from the hood. And even though she was a cosmetologist, she did hair, she taught hair. But the environment was an environment that led her to be tough. So
your mom also came through a time when they were actually, so from the 1950s, the family structure was tight. But almost in the civil rights movement, almost by design, I always say that, because we had all the manufacturing bases in the urban center, so everybody was migrating. And in the 60s, it was so powerful because we were pulling together. There's something that happened that started to break down the families. And it forced women to have to be tougher to cover their children.
Put it like this. My mother really had to stand on her own.
Right.
My father was not there. Even before he was murdered, unfortunately, he was just a runner. You know, Papa was a rolling stone. And he was not there, and so my mother had to really be a provider and a protector.
Right.
And that should never fall into the hands of a woman who's 4'7". She's 4'7", probably smaller than that.
She had to be tough with 3 sons.
3 sons, and she didn't take any, they would say, tea for the fever. So, but my uncle, what he did, he created an atmosphere for us to see a different life other than the drinking, the smoking. I mean, because though my mother worked, she had card games, she had a speakeasy. And for those listening, a speakeasy was where it was a bar in the home. Vodka, Black Bull, all the scotch. She would put all these liquors into her washing machine. And then on card game night, she would serve the liquor. And which, of course, introduced my brothers and I to liquor earlier. I'll never forget, I went to my 2nd grade class drunk.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
2nd grade.
Okay. 2nd grade. Because I got into the vodka and drank it straight.
Oh my goodness.
And they had to send me home. But again, that was a part of a process of life in that particular environment, which taught me a number of things. It taught me because I was precocious. I was really advanced in badness. You know, I was advanced because I was smoking and drinking, but also I had the capacity to count real well. I was able to play cards at that age and gamble at that age because I watched my mother and at those card games. I was able to count the cards. I was able to understand the framework of the games that were being played. So it exercised a certain part of my intellect from a street perspective. Just because a person is from the street doesn't mean they don't have any intellect.
Entrepreneurial skills.
It started to help me to think about how things work. Really, and so that process, coming through that after my mindset was changed, that I could use some of those tools and skills. I went from a student, my report card spelled Fifi, F-E-E-F-E-E. I went from an F-E-E-F-F student to a honor roll student.
And this is after your uncle?
After my uncle.
And how old do you think? You were preteen.
Well, really, this is a weird thing, but I really got committed to God at 11 and a half years old.
I know you're preteen. Yes, that's good.
I started preaching at 14. So that was in I'm going to date myself now. That was in 1976.
Wow.
How many years ago was that?
So there's something then in between that time, because you're basically learning life as we come here with a clean slate. And I hear this, there was a scripture that would always puzzle me: the destruction of the poor is their poverty. And I would try to figure out that scripture. There was one, I don't know if you agree with this, but Bill Winston would say that poverty part was lack of self-production. And I like the way he puts that, because it's true. Like, when we are able to self-produce, self-awareness, knowing who we are and how to do it. So when you're coming into the world and you're learning your survival, you're a clean slate. So your survival, so you're learning survival techniques early in that way.
Yes.
And then suddenly your uncle comes, shows you a different way of life, and it clicks. You didn't reject it, you accepted it.
Well, and I'm glad that I did. I believe that I mean, there's so many testimonies that I have as a result of embracing the lifestyle, the theology, the understanding of a relationship with God and not just religion.
Your relationship with your uncle brought you into the relationship with God, and it was a very real experience. Apparently it was a very real experience because it changed everything. You broke the cycle of, like you said, your father wasn't around. You were always hands-on.
On such a level, and my family on such a level, that for the most part, I have to be there. Because my position in my mind is that my father wasn't there. I'm going to be there. My children can call, if they call me now, I'm there. My oldest son is as those that have seen the series, is a professional drummer, and he is also an MD, music MD, as well as a producer. He called me from, I forget what country it was an Asian country, where they were taking their passports and they were going to arrest all of the band. He was out with Pharrell, and he called me. I'll never forget, I was in a place called, it's a golf course. I was marrying a football player from the Philadelphia Eagles, Pebble Beach or something in Los Angeles, in California. And he called me, and I was in the middle of getting ready to do this wedding, but the wedding had to wait until I could deal with my son's issue. And when he called me, I said to him, I said, now you go up to your room. They had stormed the hotel, ordered them. I said, lock your door and put your passport, hide it in. Do not let them get your passport. And I called one of our congressmen in Philadelphia and had them to call and begin to negotiate what was going on in that situation. To say the least, things worked out.
What was your parental philosophy? Were you tough disciplinarian? Perfect. I mean, have you lived the example in front of them that much?
To be present. That's it.
Present. Okay.
To be there. To be in their lives. To communicate with them, and not only to teach them. This is key what I'm about to say, but to learn from them. You know, something very powerful happened. I was, my son Justin was going through something very, very tough. And I got him in the car and I said, just talk to me. You know, this was probably 20 some years ago, maybe 25 years ago, maybe, about 20 years ago. Yeah, about 20 years ago. I said, you gotta talk to me, Justin. I said, what's wrong? And he paused and he stopped and he said, Dad, you are a communicator. I'm not. I don't know how to say what's wrong with me. And I begin to realize that we want people to talk, but what if they don't have the skill to communicate? So it made me see that we have to be patient enough to discern beyond even maybe they have a lack of how to communicate. Can we look beyond that?
The irony in that is that he is one of the best communicators. Like, he has a podcast, and the way on his interviews and the way he can get his point across is magnificent.
Now he's communicating on a very high level.
Pieces into play, right? We're very solution oriented. Something that me and my brother always talk about is that my father has always tried to teach us and tell us that, like you said, we don't find a problem, we find a solution. To every problem, there is a solution. So in our life, we look at, let's say, the vision that you have, right? There's a way to get there. You have to figure that out. And you have to use, going back to what you were saying, you have to use every person or every resource to get there.
There are 5 second-generation Robinsons and 7 third-generation Robinsons. Darrell Robinson Jr. is the oldest, a world-class drummer and music director, and his oldest son, Darrell Robinson III, a student and new flourishing artist, with his younger brother, Jamere, and sister Cadence in tow.
Yes, my name is James Darrell Robinson III.
Hi, my name is Katie, and I'm 7.
I'm Jamere Robinson.
On the youngest side of the second generation of Robinsons, there's 13-year-old piano prodigy Jayce, who has been the church's minister of music since the age of 10.
Remember now, he just turned 13 4 days ago. So as a 13-year-old, he started being our minister of music when, how old were you?
I think around 10 or 9.
Wow.
9 or 10. So
Wow.
Who gives their 4-year-old sister lyric pitch lessons. And in the middle, eldest daughter Tiffany, Mrs. Sandridge, a top graduate of Clark Atlanta University, a former child and now adult actor and real estate developer, with the remaining 4 sons of the third generation Robinsons, who are also working actors.
Were you scared?
Oh, I was terribly scared. Tina had poked her head up out of the...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caleb Sandridge, and I am 9 years old.
Hi, my name is Lou. I'm 7 and I'm 3.
No, you're not 3.
I'm 4.
I'm Judah Sandridge, and I'm 13 years old.
And finally, last but certainly not least, the middle son, Justin, who hosts a popular podcast with his first cousin, Keith Jr., and manages the family's venue and recording studios. He also plays drums for church services with his younger brother at the organ.
Unfortunately, my husband did pass away in September of 2019. And a little bit after he passed away, COVID hit. And so you can imagine it was just, I can't say it made the situation worse because I didn't feel at that point anything could make it worse, but it just intensified the situation, just now being stuck in the house, with now his loss being more apparent, just more real, in our phases. And we really just needed, I figured we needed to figure out something to do to kind of cope. Right. Or, something that will help us and get us through the process, keep us busy. All at the same time, now I'm really concerned with how are they doing? Like, how are, they just, experienced trauma, and are they okay? So I started talking to them about character. Wow. Because for me, as I was saying before, character to me is everything. It's just the foundation. Mm-hmm. And anywhere you could go in this world, if you don't have character, it's all for naught. That's just how I feel. And so I just started talking to, it was Caleb and Judah, and they were in my room one day, and I was like, yeah, do you guys know about character? And they're like, what's that? And so I was like, well, integrity. And and they're like, well, what's integrity? So I would give them an example, and we kind of did that with a few words. And then we were like, you know what? It was, I guess, I don't even know how, but I was just like, we're going to write a book.
Wow.
And I'm like, this will be a good opportunity for you guys to learn about character, because it dawned on me, like, all of these principles I've never learned, or these attributes or characteristics, I've never learned about them in one place.
Wow.
So I might have learned, guys, to be good listeners. So I never really in one place just learned about character, never learned about what it was to be patient, never learned about what it was to be, not to say I never had someone tell me, but again, it was never a lesson, if that makes any sense. And so, and I knew it was a huge opportunity because they didn't know. Caleb at the time was 8, and Judah at the time was 12. Wow. And so for me, I'm like, this should be something that you guys should already know. was very, very shy. So Darrell was the one, he was really doing most of the work, and I would kind of come in and they were trying to get me in, but I didn't really start acting until I went to Kappa. Creative and Performing Arts. That's where I went to for high school. And that is where I just wanted to go to the school so bad. I was like, well, I can't be a vocal major. I don't know how to play an instrument. I don't know how to draw. I'll act. And that's pretty much where the, I guess, passion for it began for me. It's just as a student in Kappa, the best high school ever. Like to plug that. But and during that time, I've also, people always say, well, Tiffany, you can sing and you can dance. And I always say, well, no, I act like I can sing. I act like I can dance. And so, naturally, I come from a very obviously musically inclined family with my dad, my brother, even my mother. And so, I just started singing on praise and worship. And then specifically when I graduated from college, I came back and started directing a choir. And
I did see you do that. Okay.
Yes. And so, it was just something, that it just came, I guess, naturally. I did graduate with honors. And, shortly after graduating, I had my baby boy and, met my husband, and kind of started life right after graduation.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did you segue into that? So once you're married, you have a son. What did you guys do? You guys kind of started in business together right away, didn't you?
Absolutely. So oddly enough, when we met, I was at Clark, and then he was also in Atlanta in acting school. So he was an actor, and it was just funny because he was from, Alabama, but he came to Atlanta to pursue acting. At that time, when I was in Atlanta, I wasn't even thinking about acting. But, we fell in love, and, he decided, once I graduated, I decided to move back home, and he came with me. And, once Judah was born, our oldest son, that's when I was like, there's something about this kid. I was like, he needs to be on TV. And so we reached back, or I reached out to our manager who we had as a kid, and Kathy Parker, and she, it was just so funny because when I reached out to her, I just told her, I was like, hey, Kathy, I don't know if you remember me. And of course, and how are you? It was this big thing. And so we set up an audition, and it was me, Judah, and my husband, David. We all went. The audition was just for Judah, but she said, you know what, Tiffany, you need to be doing this too. Wow. So I want you to read for me as well. And so we go into the audition. Judah's young at the time. He's like 4. She doesn't really represent younger kids. And so she came after the audition. She says to me, okay, this kid just did something I've never seen a kid do. She said, normally when we go in and, we have to warm the kids up and give them small talk. And so she's telling him like, just kind of trying to warm him up, especially at 4. Finally, he stopped her and was like, can we just do what me and my mom practiced? Like, can we get on with it? Like, I'm ready.
That is so good.
And so she was just like, oh my God, he's ready. And so, that's kind of how it started with Judah and then myself. And then David wasn't doing it at the time. He just accompanied us that was just our meeting to get representation, I guess, or, signed on with her as an agent. But what happened was one day we had an audition for the same job. So I got an audition I got the breakdown. It was like for a mother role of this like Sprout commercial or intro, it was an intro to a TV show or a Sprout show. I got an audition, but mine was at like one time. Then Judah got an audition for the son at another time. So I had to, go separately. And then Judah had to go to a separate time, but it was the same location and everything. Well, my husband accompanied Judah on his audition. So what happened was when David took Judah to his audition, they asked him, when he was in the waiting room, are you auditioning for the father? And he was like, yeah, sure. So he ended up going in with Judah and they did an audition together. Judah and David booked. And then I booked separately.
Wow.
They didn't even know we were a family. Not until we were on set did they know we were a real family, because at the time I was still going by my maiden name, Tiffany Robinson. So we happened to book a job as a family, me the mother, David the father, Judah the son, and they had no idea that they were putting a real family together, because they didn't know I was the mother and the wife of the two.
That's a great story.
Him, we just went on to do more auditions, and David was really great. He did a lot of he probably got more work than all of us. He did a lot of commercials, and so did Judah. Judah was on House of Cards, and we all were because when we took Judah, he got a principal role. And one thing we always learned was just to always be ready. And randomly, David and I were in there just on set, and they say to us, "We need you." And so we're like, okay. So we always laugh, because we're like, we went on and we got ours into. We had a little background part, but you'll see us in the scene with Jamere and Kevin Spacey. So it was awesome. And so but from there we decided, being an artist or being artists, that's great, but we need to make some money, and obviously acting is great, but it's a process, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
You're not going to get that breakthrough role overnight. And so we decided, and I'm always very business minded. David was as well. And so we decided to get into real estate. And, we got a property that we called our live and flip. We bought a property. We lived in it first, but we fixed it as we were living in it. Then we bought another property, ended up renting that out. Then we tried our hand on getting into the flipping business. And, we got our first rehab property. That was an adventure. So I
was going to ask you, how does that go? But you have one concept, abstract concept at first, but when you really get your hands into that, how did that go for you?
Oh my goodness. It's like, you kind of have to learn as you go, because there were so many things we thought we were prepared, right? Because we did the trainings and we did the, programs and watched the YouTube videos, but there's nothing that prepares you like just real life. Right. And so I don't want to say everything that could go wrong went wrong, but it was really a lot of just craziness. We went through 2 contractors in the very beginning. From the gate, blew $20,000, with our first, it was really a disaster, a beautiful disaster in that, I liked the testimony, and that it, the property itself, ended up, being a beautiful one at the end. But what I will tell you, it wasn't easy. Okay. And that's because, what happened was, in the real estate game, you'll hear it often. You'll hear from people, they'll say, the contractors, a good contractor is hard to find. And you're like, oh, I'm sure it's not that hard. No. A good contractor is
There's a lot of hustling contractors out there, right?
Yes. And we're not just talking about skill. We're talking about the full, package. We're talking about skill and integrity.
Right. I know. Yes.
Professionalism. Like, it's like a formula that is like, if you find this in, one entity, one contractor, you've struck gold. And it's like, you'll never let that person go. During the rehab, that's when the tragedy of my husband occurred. And so that was I don't know how to put it into words. I still, even when I try to, tell the story, I don't know how to verbalize the feeling. Right. You know what I mean? Right. I still can't really verbalize it, but I do know it was just obviously the hardest experience of my life. Because it wasn't just, obviously, I just lost my life partner, right? Right. Now I have 4 boys who are fatherless, know.
And you guys did everything together. I used to watch how much you did together.
Everything.
Yeah, so I can imagine it.
We literally did. And so it's still weird, right? But it was like surreal, and that was the thing, because he was so hands-on. Like, it was not like you said, we did everything together, so it wasn't like, oh, how was work, and this is what's going on in my life, and this is what's going on. It was very commingled, like everything. And so it was a hard transition. It really.
And did you counsel? Did you have counseling, or did you already have the tools to be able to handle tragedy?
So unfortunately, because I was so overwhelmed with continuing life, like meaning bills, because because of the nature of my husband's passing, I was denied the life insurance policy.
Oh no.
And so when he passed of suicide, we were struggling. We were struggling because the rehab specifically had drained us, because the contract, it was just horrible. So we started tapping in. We had a construction loan, but we had to end up tapping into personal finances. And then at the time, we had a tenant in the property, our other property, that wasn't paying rent. And so we were tapped out. So imagine him passing, and I hadn't worked since my youngest was born. When I say worked, I hadn't been employed, so I was self-employed. So as a realtor and doing the acting, but I did not have consistent, I was just self-employed. He had the consistent income. So once he passed and then getting denied that, it was okay. I didn't even have a chance to really grieve.
Was it Seth bringing you flowers? Who brought you flowers today?
Seth.
How cute.
He picked up,
and then one of them broke.
He said it was broken. I'm sorry. And then I get home, go back in my room, because I set them down, and it doubled. So they found flowers from another.
My gosh, that's so. So you just have like a whole home full of love and compassion, and you demonstrate that all the time. So you're an exemplary mother, because you're able to always walk with that. So you live that in front of them.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
So much.
Amazing. So after that, so now moving past COVID, you have blossomed and flourished in several other enterprises.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about any of those enterprises, like your clothing brand, your cars, your real estate, the acting? Because I know that your other sons have acted too, so we didn't get there yet either.
Yeah. So in terms of, well, first and foremost, in terms of real estate, in spite of all of the problems that came with that flip, I'm so proud to say that we finished it. It's finished. We sold it. It was beautiful. A family bought the home. They love it. And selling the book on Amazon, Are You Good from A to Z? So that's one of the things we've gotten into. And then I partnered on this clothing brand, Free Ugly. Let's see if you can see.
Yes. So read that to me, because I don't know if I'll be able to see that.
Oh, Free Ugly. So this is just the definition. It says verb, and it says the art of rejecting negative energy in you, around you, toward you. The website is freeuglybrand.com, and we have t-shirts, we have hoodies, we have hats, and still doing some acting. Caleb and Judah, they're doing lots of auditions. So Caleb, he came, hit the ground running, immediately started booking commercials. He booked, I don't know if you saw the Meek Mill documentary, Free Meek.
Found him on there, yes.
Yeah, but Caleb was, the young Meek Mill in that docu-series. And right now he's in the running for a nice role. We're hoping that he gets it. But, at the end of the day, it's all about what they want and what they enjoy it, And
he said he enjoys it. That's one great thing, because some don't, but he said he loves it, so that's wonderful.
He really goes to them and say, hey, are you having fun? Do you like this? Do you still want to do this? Because I want to make sure that they're not under the pressure of doing it.
Right.
And it's something that they really want, and would do anything to be on TV. So just to have that opportunity, for them to, be able to express themselves, artistic.
So really right now in my life, really just it's about adding value. And any room that I go in or anything that I decide to do, the doors will open because I'm valuable. So yeah, that's pretty much where I am at this point. That's good.
And also the studio here, at the hall here, we have a studio upstairs. And maybe we'll take a look there. That he's really Justin right now is, you know, anybody that comes and books it, they got to go through him. Okay. So he's working on that, and besides that, he also has a podcast.
Right. How do the podcast start? Talk Heavy. So you do that with your cousins? Is it all family, or who's on that podcast that you guys are doing?
Yeah. So right now on the podcast, it's me, my cousin Keith Robinson, Venice Penn. She's an amazing talent, and my other cousin Scott Reed. It started off with my uncle Keith Robinson, right? So he's a comedian, world renowned, a lot of people know him, and he was like, listen, you guys should start a podcast. They're hot right now. And I was like, at the time I didn't know what a podcast was, but I was interested in talk radio. So just a quick tidbit, what a lot of people don't know, right? There was, when the Drake and Meek beef started, I was like, yo, I have to talk about this somewhere. Like it wasn't enough just being on Twitter, right? So I went around my grandmother's way. I gathered up some of us and we just got on the porch and we just pulled out a camera and started talking about it. So that was actually my first shot but I didn't know that was really a podcast format. Right. So that's how I kind of started that format. And then when Uncle Keith, he kind of picked us up and we got a studio and we just went on from there. It's great.
And where's the studio located?
So right now, the studio that we're in is located down South Philadelphia in one of Bishop Robinson's many buildings.
Great. Okay. And how often do you go in your career conversation? So who are some of the top celebrities that you've interviewed and some of the best interviews that you've had?
Some of the best interviews, just thinking off the top of my head, we have Daphne Springs. She was very fun. We have Charlie Mack. He's the guy that everybody knows. We did an interview with him. Of course, he had great stories for us. We've had a small interview with Kevin Hart. That was great. We've had, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the show. Well, I know you are. Come on, guys. You watch The Chi, but it's a show called The Chi. Judea, she's amazing. She plays the character Gemma. We've had her. If you're familiar with Insecure, then we've had TSA Bay. That was his name on the show. Yes, Reggie Conquest on the show, and that's a few of the people.
That had to be fun. He's always fun. He's
always fun. Oh, I can't forget the family. How can I forget that? We had Adam Blackstone on the show. We've had Aaron Draper on the show.
Very, 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 very special guest. The one and only, the percussionist of the stars is what they call him these days. You know what I'm saying? The new co-lead singer of the Origin Band, huh?
Doctor.
Doctor. We got the one and only Aaron Draper in the building.
Good evening.
Hey. Darrell Robinson on the show. So it's always fun interviewing people that you know, right? But they have status, right? So it's like almost like having a conversation, but it's like meeting them in a different light when you're doing an interview with them. So I always enjoy having that. Oh, DJ Active. The more I talk, the more names I have that's popping up. But yeah, it's always, that's always a great aspect to interviewing when you have a podcast, to have a live podcast, to actually coach people into doing podcasts. Because when I started doing podcasts, they weren't as popular amongst people my age. Now they're super popular. So, a lot of people want to do it. They don't know how to start. So even start classes and things of that nature. That's where the influence comes in at. So, that's kind of the direction I want to move in, because, to bring a little Bible when I have to, Bishop Robinson's son, you know what I'm saying? Without a vision, the people will perish. And a lot of the people out here are moving aimlessly. So if a lot of our young people, our youth out here, if they have just a vision somewhere where they can see themselves going in the future, and if I could be the one to teach them anything, I would love to be that person, to be there to teach them something that they can just move forward.
Great. That's perfect. Okay, I think I got it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking your Sunday off, because I know, guys, it's warm outside and nobody wants to stop doing what they're doing. I always thought it would be hard to be a pastor's wife. No kidding. Like, I would think that would be like the hardest job, because you have so many people. You have your family. You got to make sure you're covering your husband all the time for so many different reasons. So I really admire every first lady, because that's a really hard job, especially covering your family, covering your husband, and then all the responsibilities that you have to have. Even when you're exhausted, you got to deal with the people. I call it people exhaustion sometimes. Then I admire you too, because I want to ask another question beyond that, because I know you're an artist and a singer, and I love to watch you doing your praise and worship. And I love that you're a real worshiper. I can see that when I come to the church. I can see you really worshiping, which is a blessing. But when did you first identify that your son had this gift?
I guess you can, like 5. Like, I mean, I noticed that in church, like he would kind of like when the music was going, he would kind of, you know, with the beats and stuff, he would kind of like, you know, at home, he would kind of sing the melody to the songs. It was like, okay, Jace is doing this, but I noticed that he was doing it more and more. And so I decided to put him in a music school at 5. And I noticed that he caught on real fast. And I mean, I just thank God, you know, in school at 5, started reading, and then he started playing. And it was like every day. Like, I mean, it comes down to consistency. Like, I mean, people are naturally talented, which is a great thing, but ultimately to perfect what you do is consistency. So it was like every day, you know, practice.
Now, did you have to really push him to do it, or was he just naturally, he wanted to do it all the time?
Well, when he was younger, it was like you start off with 15 minutes a day, 30 minutes, and it kind of increased. But when he's younger, I mean, like now it's like he's automatic. But of course, when the kids are younger, it's like some days, you know, they'll want to do more time with their craft, and then other days like, okay, I want to just. But I noticed like now that he's older, it's like it comes natural. So it's like when he was younger, of course, you had to kind of keep a schedule for them.
Okay.
But now, you know, he's it comes like it's like second nature to him now, and I just thank God for the gift that he put on him, you know.
And how do you watch him all the time? Do you make sure he's not under pressure? Do you watch his pressure? Do you watch when you feel like he's being pushed too much, or do you watch his emotional state when it comes to that? Are you mothers are that's the mother hens we know, you know, more than the fathers, I think, you know. Sorry, Bishop, but I'm just talking mom to mom. Bring it in. That moms know, like, we can gauge when he's tired, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you have to have a balance. I mean, have to have a balance. So whereas that, you know, he's still a kid. I mean, you still give them their time, you know, space and time to do what they want to do. Like, you reward them. It's not like you reward him in this way. So it's like having this time, like, you know, you gotta reward, you know, their hard work. You just can't like drive. I mean, of course you put, you know, back them up, but you gotta reward all the sacrifice. You know what I mean?
Like, do you feel like you were groomed your entire life to be a first lady, because you were always in the church? You were always, you know, do you think that God was preparing you the entire time to be a first lady? That's a role that's just huge to me. Do you believe that was all the building blocks were there since you were young, growing up?
Well, I came from a Christian home. My grandma was the first lady. My grandfather was the pastor of the church. So I grew up in a home in that dynamic. You know what I mean? So, you know, preacher's kid and everything.
And they raised you.
And they raised me very well. And I thank God for them. I just, like, I mean, I always knew that my job was to help build the kingdom of God. I mean, you know, just always. I mean, that's, you know, no matter what I do, it's okay to, you know, have your career and whatever you want to, you know, do for yourself. But I knew my heart desire was to help the kingdom.
Why can't I hear the love story?
Because I'm so debonair.
Sister Elaine, my mom was the first thing she was ready to see. She goes, I want to see Bishop's wife, is what she said. My mom in Kansas.
Because I'm so wonderful. No, let me stop. I'm going to let her live. Go ahead.
The love story.
you want me to start?
Yes.
Well,
I was doing a project for you.
A single. I was doing like a single. Like was it 5 songs? I was doing a single. 5 songs. Yeah.
Well,
and it was,
a single is a single.
Yeah, single. But it was 5. It was 5 songs.
Yeah. That's not a single at all.
So EP, you're doing your EP. You're doing your EP.
See how nervous she is. See how nervous she gets when I look at her. Watch this.
Well, stop looking at her, Sister Elaine, Lady Robinson. Just look at me. Look at me. So you were doing an EP, and then go ahead.
Yeah. I was doing these songs, and I wanted to go in the studio and do the tracks and everything. And I was introduced to him through a family member. And that was, oh my goodness, that was 16.
No, it was longer than that.
16.
No, it was more than 16. We've been married for a little bit. So
17 years ago?
Yeah, about 17
years ago, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was 17 years ago.
It was a love at first sight, and what?
You want to know the real juice.
That's too funny.
No, because people love stories. Like women, we're like we love the princess and the knight in shining armor stories. You know, like if he was your knight in shining armor, and so you're doing the music.
What I was to you. Let people know the real juice. I was that dude. Let me see.
But did he court you well? Does he courted you?
Oh yeah. We got to know each other. It was like a lot of musical events. That was nice. And we both love music. So that was a really great connection. It was like we had a lot of things in common, so it was really nice. Like, to really get to know each other and everything. And like, it was really nice. Yeah, it was really nice. So
then he came to talk to your parents and your grandparents. And so how did the whole marriage come? How did the proposal come?
What was it?
We were at a Chinese restaurant, and I had a magnificent ring.
What was it?
It was the Imperial Inn, and I started an argument with her. I started the argument, faking her out to make her think it was about something else. I said, I think you've been seeing somebody else. She said, what? I said, yes, you have, haven't you? And you know how I do things. And then I went on and had the people come over, and I pulled the ring out, and it was a serious swirl.
So who was there? Who was there?
Just the two of us.
The two of us.
People in the restaurant, yeah.
And the people in the restaurant. Mm-hmm.
Were you surprised, or you knew he was going to do? Were you super surprised?
Super surprised. I mean, I did not know that he was going to do that.
So did you say yes right away? Did you start crying or what?
I was just shocked. I was so shocked. I was like, okay.
Jayce wanted to hear that. Look at Jayce's face.
Jayce he loves that story too. Have you ever heard that love story? I remember I would be a teenager when I first started hearing my mom and dad's love stories. Because my mom and dad, they told their love story, how my mom was walking down the street, my dad was driving by, and how they met. And I was like, really? He was like, he's macking on her. She's walking home from work. So it was always fun to hear those stories, right, Jayce?
I'm macking. What kind of 1932?
Hey, look, I'm not afraid to show my old grades and my old language. Elaine, Sister Elaine, Jayce, you know what macking means? When you macked.
Jayce don't know what macking means. You listen. You got to come up. I'm gonna give you a lesson
in modern language.
Additional activity.